Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Fit for Function podcast. Today, we are talking about the reason that it's important for women to strength train and lift weights, and who else and who better to kind of guide us through that than strength and conditioning coach extraordinaire Becky Dunn. So this is something that I think I ran into a lot. So for those that don't know, I spent about 3 or 4 years running a sales team for a gym, and so we obviously were meeting people that were coming into the gym, and they wanted to get fitter, get stronger, improve their lifestyle. And the thing that we ran into the most with the ladies in particular is that they just either didn't want to strength train, they were worried about getting too bulky, they were intimidated by the weights area. So we're going to try and unpack some of that today. So, Bex, why should women strength train?
Well, there are so many benefits to women's strength training, but to talk to your point and coming from a level of coming from experience, I completely understand why women are scared to go into the weight section, because I was one of those women. Even when I was training with you, I was training with Rob, super experienced, and so I had like what's the word? Like a comfort at the gym. Like I had
Like a
someone that
safety blanket.
had you with a safety blanket, and I still didn't want to go in the weight section. We were training chest in the gym, and I was like, no, please don't make me go in the weights. I really, really don't want to do it. So we did machines session because
Yeah.
I just didn't want to go in the weight section.
It always reminds me of that scene in The Lion King, like what's that over there? Like that's the dark side. We don't go over there. And so that's kind of how women see it. They kind of look at the weight section from afar. Much less so now,
Well, I hope so. You see way more women in the gym
for sure.
in the weight
Yeah.
section now. So I'm hoping that's changed. That was actually something that I was going to say. I'm hoping that has shifted. But when I started training 10 years ago, I was absolutely petrified of the weight section. That being said, I think that shift in confidence has come from lifting weights, feeling strong, and feeling empowered. Because now I don't care what gym it is, I will go and just walk into the weights area because I feel like I can handle myself in a weights area. But that's not to say that you couldn't. It's just that you just feel it's just so much more empowered.
Yeah, for sure.
But to go back to your point about women needing to strength train, I think we start by how our bones start to break down as we get older. So starting with actual strength training as an insurance policy for future you, to help you as we get older in life. If you don't strength train or resistance train or just keep the body moving in general, the way you're exposing yourself to injuries, or especially as you get older and you might have a fall, and how you'll recover is so hugely impacted. But that also comes down to your hormones and having those balanced and regulated when you train, especially when we start to hit menopause and perimenopause. So there are so many benefits that can help women with strength training.
I agree. And I really like that you talk about having a fall. There was something that a guy called Mark Hall, who was on the podcast a while back, he said something to me and I've not been able to shake it. It's one of the best analogies I've heard. He was messing around with his wife. She'd fallen over. She'd tripped up. She'd fallen over and hurt herself. And he said, he was kind of making a bit of a joke, poking at her age a little bit. But he said, this time you fell over, next time you might have a fall. And there is that point, I don't know what age it is when someone goes from falling over to having a fall. And
30?
yeah, it feels like 30 for sure. It does feel like 30, but he's kind of right. He's joking, but he's kind of right that there comes a certain point where having a fall becomes much more of a risk, and catastrophic injury associated with having a fall. And so you talk about bone density.
Yeah.
making sure that your bones are dense and strong, that you can survive the impact, making sure your muscles are in a place where you can get back up.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's vital, right?
Well, it's the foundation to independence
Yep,
as well.
yep.
As we see as we get older and we've had loved ones that, I've seen from both ends of the spectrum.
Mm,
If we look at your granddad as one
hmm.
end, that so Rob's granddad was really, really active, and that activity level just come from walking, didn't it? Really, in the
Pretty
end,
much,
and
yeah.
he lived into his 90s. He was so fit and healthy. And then we take someone like my nan on the other side, who was really, really inactive, and her life declined very quickly towards the end, didn't
Yeah,
it? From that
yeah,
level of inactivity and not being able to move. And so it was actually so interesting to see both spectrums of, seeing that in real time of how the body really does start to deteriorate.
for
But
sure.
although we joked about being 30 and that full, your bones start to lose density as soon as you hit 30.
Hmm.
So that process starts as early as 30. So although that might be really small, that does start to happen. And then you spoke about the muscle and doing basic movement patterns. I feel that, even with having a child, when you're picking your child up from the car
Hmm.
or picking things up from maybe getting some shopping out the car, you know, those movement patterns mirror like a deadlift
Hmm.
or, so if your form or you're not good through, you're not strong through that movement pattern, you can see why people would pull their back.
Yep.
Like where they start to get muscle imbalances. So you learn proper form and technique as well that you will carry throughout your life. So when you're bend down and picking up your shopping, like we don't bend down and round our backs and pick it up. Like we bend at the knees,
Yeah,
drive through the
yeah.
hills, pick up, farmers carry them back because we have the ability to be able to do it. But really, I think having the mindset young for training for future you is also a really good mindset to have for women.
It is really hard though, isn't it? Because future us is so far away, or it feels so far away.
Mm.
Um, but for those listening to this that are over 30, maybe over 40, they'll kind of know. Anyone in their 20s listening to this will be like, nonsense, I'm going to be fine. And you kind of get to 30 and you're like, oof, a bit more stiff, bit more, requiring a bit more warming up, don't recover as quickly. And, I'm
Mhm.
closer to 40 than I am 30 now. And again, I'm starting to spend almost as much time warming up as I do actually training. It gets to a point where it's ridiculous. So
It gets to a point where it's a
it's a
necessity.
necessity. I
You
can't
can't
train without
train.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if we start with body composition
Yep.
and confidence
Yep.
and muscle mass and fat loss, I think for women strength training, first and foremost, so many women desire or really want to achieve that toned physique or just looking like they work out. But when we think about strength training, and again, I hope the narrative's changed a little bit, but when we think about strength training, the mind for a woman automatically goes to, well, that's going to make me bulky.
Mm.
So I don't want to weight train because that's going to make me bulky when in actual fact it does the complete opposite. It absolutely gives you the outcome that you're looking for. If you want that toned muscle effect, the only way to get it is by resistance training.
And I think it's important to talk about because it's a term that's been in the fitness industry longer than I've been in the fitness industry, and I started in the fitness space in a professional capacity in my very early 20s. But I've been in sport and fitness my entire life. But people talk about, I want to get toned. And I know you've spoken about this on your socials. I've spoken about it on my socials. But just to be really clear about what being toned means, right? It's increasing muscle mass whilst reducing body fat. Think of it as like a shrink wrap effect. If you're putting on lots of muscle mass, but your body fat stays high, you're still going to look kind of soft and watery. And so that toning is reducing body fat and increasing muscle mass. The easiest way to do it is to just build a little bit of muscle.
Yeah.
You want to yes, we might want to reduce body fat, but I think that's a dangerous thing to kind of get into, particularly with women and body dysmorphia and the fact that women's body fat should be higher than men's anyway, just from an evolutionary standpoint. But building a little bit of muscle mass, you'll be amazing how quickly you look toned in inverted commas.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's a really important thing. That toned effect is just building a little bit of muscle mass, reducing your body fat enough so you can start to see the body of the muscle.
But that
Really is
body
that.
fat also reduces down as you start to weight train.
Oh, for sure. The
So
metabolic demand is significant,
yeah.
right?
So when you weight train, it increases your metabolic demand. So that is the need for how the calories are burned in the body, basically. So having muscle is the most expensive currency in the body. So in order to be able to maintain, repair, and keep building muscle, you need the food and energy to be able to fuel it. But in order to just even maintain it, the calories that you burn whilst you're at rest increases significantly in order to be able to maintain that muscle mass, which is what we mean when we say the metabolic demand is increased. So the
Mm,
more muscle you have, the higher the metabolic demand. So essentially, the more calories you're going to burn whilst at rest.
mm,
So your body, even now, me sat in this chair, having a great time doing this podcast, my body's going to be burning calories in order
yeah.
just to keep these big biceps
So let's hang on.
juicy.
Let's stay on that big bicep thing, right? Because I think it's a tricky one because people are going to look at this and watch this and say, you said weight training is not going to make you bulky, and then they sat there looking at you, going, well, hang on, look at those guns. But I think it's important to understand that the sport that Bex does is very bodyweight based, calisthenics based.
Yeah,
Your training style is such that you are somewhat seeking that. And I say this all the time, and she gets a little bit offended um, because if she thinks I'm detracting from the hard work. She eats incredibly well, incredibly clean. She's very disciplined. She trains incredibly hard. She rests her body properly. She sleeps well. But she also does just have this natural propensity to build muscle. There is a genetic element to it that you know can't be ignored in some capacity. It's not that not that she doesn't work hard for it, but naturally her body just responds really well to that kind of hypertrophy
but also
demand.
there are like you say, there are a couple of different factors. The sport that I do, like if you look at anybody at a professional category who does pole fitness or aerial acrobatics
Or
or
gymnastics or anything in
gymnastics,
that kind of
very,
field.
very similar physique. That being said, it has taken me years,
Hmm.
years to
Hmm.
build my physique. If you saw my physique, even back in 2017 when we got married, I was still
Hmm.
training the same, maybe not like as heavy, like in terms of the weight that I was pushing and stuff. But my pole training was still the same. The way I was fueling my body wasn't, but that's another topic. But my physique wasn't like the way it is now, and that has taken so much time. So that's another thing as well.
Yeah.
Muscle requires time. Like you're not going to go to the gym and do one workout and then wake up the next day with a six pack, or really toned arms, or toned I was going to say toned triceps.
Hmm.
It's toned arms. It requires time. It requires the right type of plan. So yeah, it isn't going to happen overnight. And then on the flip side of that, when we talk about, bulking and being like, oh, I don't want to get too bulky, you would have to consume so much food and you'd have to train
Mm.
so much, like twice a day, to really, really, really bulk up. So it's just not going to happen. So yeah, I just want to start there. Really, I think that's a really, really good starting point. The body composition that you would want, you're going to achieve through weight training.
Mm.
Um, as a result, that's going to give you nice toned muscles. Your metabolic demand's going to increase, which means you can eat more. And where was I going with that? I was going to say something else then. We're burning more calories at rest as well. And then with that, reduce a bit of body fat as well. That's going to
Hmm.
come.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
I
great
love that.
starting point.
I think it's a useful time just to talk about because we started off kind of talking about why women should weight train, and you hit the nail on the head. Actually, it's why women should resistance train. Now, we can get into the depth of why we think free weights over machines or kettlebells versus dumbbells or whatever it might be. But I think we should quickly take a second just to highlight resistance training as a whole is anything where you are exerting force against resistance. So that could be resistance bands, that could be cables, dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, medicine balls. It really doesn't matter what the specific tool is, but if you take a bench press, for example, you're lying on your back and you're pushing whatever it might be, a bar or dumbbells out in front of you, the resistance comes from the weight, right? Gravity is the resistance in that particular example. Whereas like a cable, a cable station, obviously the cable is providing the resistance. So that's what we mean by resistance training is anything where, so for example, cardio running, not a resistance activity. Um, so yeah, I think that's just worth touching on that when we talk about weight training, it could be machines, it could be cables, it could be kettlebells. It doesn't really matter.
No.
There's pros and cons for each one.
Yeah, and you use different styles of equipment to achieve different goals, or you
Yeah,
might,
it's horses for courses.
yeah. But ultimately, just doing some form of resistance training. And then I think it's really nice to move into aging.
Hmm.
As we get older, more and more studies are coming out now that we will happily spend so much money to try and make ourselves look younger, whether that's
Right,
creams,
right.
aesthetics,
Yeah,
and all of that has a part to play for sure. Um, but one of the best things you can do for aging and prevent aging is keeping fit, keeping active.
that's an amazing point, actually. I've never considered that. The amount of time and effort we put into looking younger, but we neglect actually feeling younger. Like we'll quite happily inject stuff into our faces in order to present as younger, but we can't climb a flight of stairs,
No.
for example. That's a really interesting point. I've never considered that before.
Yeah. So if we put aging in, with aging, and then alongside that, functional fitness. And by functional fitness, I mean your balance,
Hmm.
stability, a bit like what you said with the lower risk of falls and, all
For
of
sure.
that. Can you bend down and pick something up without being in pain?
Can you get up off the floor?
The big thing that we've always said as well, that's really, I think something that should be considered. I never really want to get to a point where I can't play with Ro.
Mm,
Or, if in the future we're lucky enough to see him have grandchildren or to have children, we have grandchildren. I don't ever want to be in a position where I can't pick them up.
totally agree.
So I think, with that, not only just, it all ties in, doesn't it? Not just with like physically aging, but also, again, thinking about that long term. You know what it's like when, even now, so I'm 31 and I sometimes have a reoccurring glute injury.
Hmm.
When that goes off a little bit, I've managed that and got that under control through rehab and making sure I've strengthened and been really, really strict with that. But when it does go off, like it did a couple of weeks ago, I can't even bend down and pick Row up.
Mm.
I am in agony. So to think like that down the line, that's enough of a drive for me to be like, I want to keep as fit and healthy as possible, just to keep the body moving.
I don't disagree. I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's spot on.
So yeah, and then with we talked about bone density, muscle mass starts to reduce
Hmm.
as we get older, quite significantly.
Hmm.
And for women, that accelerates as they hit menopause.
Yes.
So along with all the hormones changing, and that's actually one of the reasons why it accelerates, because estrogen drops. So that affects so much. But on the flip side of that, and it's not to say that it will completely combat it, but being fit, staying active during menopause as well, can also have such a positive effect. It really does take a toll on people's mental health, physical health,
Hmm.
so having that as like a staple in your life that you continue to do will really benefit you.
I agree. I think anything you can do from an exercise standpoint to make you feel fit, healthy, young, again, in inverted commas, I think is going to be tremendously valuable for you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just the key takeaways from that. I think, it's protecting exactly what I said at the start, that your strength training, resistance training is your insurance policy, your health insurance policy.
Yeah.
It will keep you fitter for longer. It will keep the body moving. It will slow down the bone the bone density loss, which in turn will help you when you take a fall when you're older, because it's going to happen. I mean, you tripped today.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like it's going to happen. So to best protect yourself, and also, if you do have a fall and you do, because you can't odds these things. I might fall tomorrow and break my ankle. That does happen. Touch wood, that doesn't. I do want to touch wood, that doesn't happen. But and also giving yourself the best possible option, the best possible sort of outcome for recovery
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, so yeah, I think those are just so fundamental.
Yeah. I think also on top of that, it's just feeling capable. So yes, the aging thing is important to make sure you can stay as active as possible and as stay in as good condition as long as you possibly can. Um, but just being capable, and I know you take the mickey out of me because I'm quite extreme in some of my views around things going catastrophically wrong. Um, but I do think a lot about self-preservation. Are
Mhm.
you able to pull yourself to safety?
Yes.
Could you, could you pull somebody else to safety? Could you climb something? Could you, get over a wall if you needed to? Could you push somebody away? Do you have these basic kind of? I mean, I talk about this a lot, right? And it's a kind of, I guess, taking a darker turn on the podcast, but I saw this thing in America a little while ago. It was at an American football game outside the stadium. There was a guy with a gun. Thankfully, no one was hurt. A couple of heroes tackled this guy to the ground. But obviously, word got out that there was a gunman walking around the stadium and fucking pandemonium broke out. And the amount of people that were running and falling, or they couldn't climb over the little metal railings you get at like concerts and stuff.
Mm.
They couldn't climb over them, and it just looked like a complete lack of physical competence by the general population. And I
Yeah.
just thought that is such a horrible situation. Could you carry your child if they were hurt? So I really, and I know you think I catastrophize a lot of stuff, but
No, because do you remember that video that went viral of the trolley that went down the hill,
the
and it
the
was
the pushchair, I think, wasn't it?
a pushchair, and it was the parent who was slightly overweight, or they were quite
Quite
considerably
overweight.
quite overweight, and as they went to go get the pushchair, they tripped,
Hmm.
um,
And they couldn't get back up.
and couldn't get back up.
And this thing's like, I think, careering to like a road or something, and someone managed to run and swoop in at the last minute. So
Oh yeah, it just makes me
y-
feel, whew.
yeah, I know, and I know people think I'm really extreme with these kind of things, but I want to be prepared for the worst case scenario,
Yeah,
and I know you do too. So
absolutely. I just want to be a strong ass mum.
yeah,
So can't wait for sports day.
I know you can't.
So, and I think a really nice thing so we've covered, aging and bone density and muscle mass. But I think a really, really important one as well is mental health, self-esteem, confidence. When you start training and you start to see the improvements in your physique, which will happen, because you're resistance training, you're building muscle mass, your body composition itself will change, and with little diet tweaks that happen, because, when you start training, when you go for a gym session, maybe before or after it, you're not, you're not going to eat bad. The
Mm,
likelihood of you eating bad before or after a gym session, just because you're not really in that mental headspace. I've never walked out of a gym session and gone, oh, I'm going to go get a pizza now.
yeah, yeah,
Unless it was obviously like a planned event and we were going out for dinner, or, something like
sure.
that. Or I don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, you know what? I'm going to have some pancakes with chocolate sauce and whatever it might be, and then I'm going to go to
And
the
then you got to
gym.
carry that around the gym.
Yeah. So
Mm,
so even having the gym sessions planned in, whatever that looks like, you're more likely to eat better off the back of it. So there's that. And then when your body starts changing, you start to feel more empowered and more
For
confident,
sure.
especially when you start to see those changes happening. So, you might go into the gym, you might be doing a squat with a 10-kilo bar. Then the following week, the 10 feels really easy and you start using 15 kilos. It's a small amount of weight increase, but the difference it gives you in your
Mm,
confidence because you're like, oh, I'm getting stronger. And then that continues over a period of time where, you start to feel empowered, you start to feel strong, you carry yourself differently as a result. It's one of the best things that you can do for mental health. I stand by this statement, period. You never ever regret a workout.
never.
Ever. You never ever do. I remember, I know this is a little bit different, but it's still the same. I remember when I was pregnant, I used to drive to the studio and be like, I don't know how I'm going to teach kettlebells. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I'd always feel fucking fantastic afterwards. And it was that level of endorphins. But pregnant or not, still sometimes you go to the gym and you're like, ugh, can't really be bothered.
Hmm.
But you get it done and you feel superb.
The endorphin release is unmatched, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, I had a terrible session today in the gym. Just kind of going through the motions. Didn't really hit any numbers. All my numbers were down from last week, but he's like, I just felt good.
But you did it.
Once I got in the shower and I was like, okay, it's in the bank,
Hmm.
feel good. The
Yeah.
blood's pumping. I've got a sweat on. Great, I can go crack on and attack the day.
That is a really good point, actually, that I'd like to add. You can't use it as an excuse, unfortunately. I can, because I had a bad session like that last week, but it was my hormones.
Mm,
So, as women, our hormones do fluctuate. We work in a 4-week cycle. Each phase of that cycle will impact you differently.
hmm.
One phase you might need a little bit more calories. One phase you're going to be bang on your strength. One phase you're going to feel a little bit blah, and that's totally normal. Um, but that doesn't mean that you don't not do it. I went to the gym last week. I was feeling fucking horrendous. I was just like, this, I haven't got this. I haven't got this today. My head wasn't in it. But that only happened when I got in the gym. But I
Mm.
was like, not feeling this, went to go squat. I was like, nah, check my Fitbit. And I was 2 days out from my period. And I was like, okay, that explains everything. But I still got it done and I still moved the body. So I still got that endorphin release. I still felt good. And the difference from whether I always think for me as well, I wouldn't want to get to a period where you miss the window of not being able to work out and then sat on the sofa that night being like, wish I'd worked out. You just feel good and like I say, you don't ever regret doing it. So the mental health, the self-esteem, the body confidence, when you start to feel strong, you start to see your body in a different way. So putting on that little black dress when you go out for a Christmas do,
Mm.
or you go meet your friends, instead of, maybe hiding under sort of baggy clothes and not feeling comfortable, the confidence starts to come out, and especially when people start to notice the changes as well.
And I think the confidence also not just doesn't just come from the physique itself. It comes from the fact that you earned it.
Mm,
It's you had to work hard. You had to put forth some effort to get it. So yeah, and the studies that are coming out now are ridiculous on. Um, I want to get this right. I'll correct it if it's not, but it's something along the lines of exercise has been shown to be 4 times more effective than the leading pharmaceuticals when it comes to aiding in mental health issues.
yeah,
So look, if you need the medicine, take the medicine. But maybe just check the lifestyle first. I've got this mental health checklist. If ever I'm not feeling 100%, I kind of look at how am I eating, how am I sleeping, am I training enough, how am I making enough time for my relationships. But the exercise piece is significant. But go and do the therapy as well. But you'll be amazed at how your mental health will just generally improve if you are exercising regularly.
100%. So I think that leads nicely into where to start if you
Mm.
aren't, or maybe you are. 2 to 3 times a week strength training is more than enough. If you can get more in, fantastic. What that might look like for you. There's different styles of training. You can do more of a sort of, I use bodybuilder split, but that's probably not really appropriate because that really is applicable if you're training a lot in the gym. if you're training 2-3 times a week, the best way to train, in my personal opinion, would be full body training. And that would include getting in one major compound lift. So that might be your squats, bench press, deadlifts, or a pull up. Not necessarily a full pull up, but even working on,
Or a lat pull down.
lat pull downs or banded pull ups. That's what we class as your major compound lifts. And then putting in accessory work around it. So the way I would structure your session is having the one compound lift in there and then the accessory work around it. But have a leg exercise, have a shoulder exercise, have a back exercise, a chest exercise, and then maybe something for the core. Or the one I say, I collect sort of core hip hinge movement in one sort of
Mm.
group, really. If you can, if you do a kettlebell swing, which is a hip hinge movement, for example, that targets the core significantly. So it sort of caveats all of it, really. But yeah, that's how I would look at your training. And I think that structure works incredibly well. It also means that if you have a really crazy busy week, or maybe you're feeling a bit shit and you really can't get to the gym because maybe you're not very well, or life just doesn't allow, at least you've hit each body part a minimum once that week.
Yeah, I mean, this is the advice I give my clients. I work with busy professionals. 80% of my client base are director level or above, and so they travel a lot. And they're pulled in and out of meetings, and the risk of the bodybuilding split, say it's a push pull legs, or even more divided up into chest, back, legs, arms, shoulders. The challenge with that, right, is if, let's say, you get push and pull in, and then you got to fly out on business for a couple of days last minute. When do you get legs in?
Mm.
Do
And it,
you roll it over? Do you try and cram it all together if you know you're going away? So I'm exactly with you. The way I structure, I mean, I train full body
I,
because I train sport specific. I train for longevity and to be better at strangling people at jiu-jitsu. So exactly the same as you, full body. And I always look for one leg, one back, one chest, one shoulder, and a hinge. So 4 to 5 exercises. Sometimes you get 2 for 1, right?
yeah,
Depending on
yeah,
the
yeah,
exercise, right? But
yeah.
yeah, a push for chest, a push for shoulders, a pull for back, a leg exercise, and a hinge. Um, but if you're starting out, by the way, don't don't rule out body weight exercises. I was working with a client this morning who is early in his journey, and one thing we're really focusing on at the moment is his push-ups and his body weight squats. We're just trying to get some volume into those, and um, again, his physique is changing. He's getting stronger, but we're utilizing the very basics.
It's super interesting that you say that, actually, because I give more advice to my clients, and these are, predominantly polars, but, also just general population, um, that will jump straight in with squatting either the barbell, which is 20 kilos, or maybe putting sort of 25 on the bar in terms of like the 5 on top of the 20, that's the bar. And then their form's a little bit off,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not quite sort of, they're feeling it somewhere else because they're compensating. And then I'll look at their form. Well, that's the first thing I say, send me a video immediately. You watch their form and it's a little bit off, and it's because they haven't strengthened through that range of movement.
Mm.
So, you know, doing a squat, yes, you know, it's a great starting point, but can you squat with good form with body weight first and then progressively overload? So with the strength training too, that's a really, really good place to start if you are absolutely brand new. And that goes if you do a sport, right? And I think that's where the misconception can be. Let's take pole for an example. If you're a polar and you're like, well, I'm really strong at pole, or I have a good base level of strength, so if I'm going to the gym, like, I should be able to put weight on that bar. Well, actually, if you've never squatted properly
Mm.
before, or never done a deadlift properly before, like, take the deadlift, there's the form to a deadlift is, it looks like just an up and down movement, but there's so much to it that people get so wrong through no fault of their own, just not understanding form and technique. Stripping it back to body weight and then progressively moving up when it feels good for you is also really, really important.
Yeah, and also understanding that your not your body composition, but the way you're built is going to dictate somewhat how you perform through movements.
Oh,
You know,
huge.
I've got a very unusual physique, like extremely unusual. I'm 6 foot, but I've got the legs of someone who's 6'4" and the torso of someone who's 5'10". Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so, um, I can't squat flat footed. I have to have my heels elevated. I've got broad shoulders, but quite long, skinny arms. So bench pressing has always been very difficult for me. So there's going to be things that you're strong at and things that you suck at, and that's also fine. And then you're going to look around the gym and you're going to see someone lifting more weight than you or getting a better range of motion. And sometimes that's just the gift from the gods, and sometimes that's body composition. Sometimes they're working harder than you. But so just understanding that um, you should have a basic grasp of, as you said, you should be able to body weight squat for reps.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to press up for reps. And then you want to start moving into things like, can you pull up your own body weight? Can you dip your own body? That comes a little bit further down the line. But checking your ego, getting the basics absolutely nailed on,
Yeah.
I can't kind of
This is
recommend that enough.
this is where working with a coach can come in really
For sure.
handy because even down to leg length or like it's not leg length necessarily, it's I just had the word for it. I want to say femur length, but it is the if you've got short femurs or long
Yeah,
femurs,
yeah,
the
yeah.
way your body is
Yeah.
designed, people who are slightly shorter find deadlifting much easier versus someone that's got long limbs. Limbs was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, the bar's got less distance to travel,
Yeah.
relatively.
Like for me, I feel more comfortable squatting with my feet turned out by 45 degrees slightly.
Yeah.
Gives me a little bit more range of motion through my hips. Like you like to squat. I have so many clients that squat with
Heels elevated.
plates
Yeah.
or yoga blocks underneath their heels to allow a little bit more range of motion through the hips and the ankles. So yeah, there are loads of factors there, but also something that I read the other day and something that I think is really, really important. Not only can you do a bodyweight squat and then you can progress, like could you pull yourself up, etc. Because pull up is really fucking hard. But can you get off the floor without putting your hands down?
It's a great metric.
Like, can you actually get up without having to use your hands? Because you don't do that. Like you do it when you're a kid,
Mm,
but you don't really sit on the floor as an adult
no,
that much.
no.
And then getting up off the floor, we've seen it. I've seen it a lot where we have people around us that you need to maneuver
Yeah, yeah.
to actually get up or down off the floor. So again, another metric to be able to use. But yeah, these basic functions, and that loops back to functional fitness, balance, strength, coordination. If you were to fall, how would that impact you? Could you get back up again? And I think can you move in a way that's going to protect you from injury? So yeah, all of these factors are just key. And the only way to eliminate them or to put yourself in a better position is to strength train.
I agree. I'm going to make a a slight prediction that
Rob done predictions.
hashtag Rob Dunn's predictions.
And me and Rob have been doing this for years. Rob always predicts stuff, and I used to make a note in my
Yeah, we used to make a long
notes.
list of them
Hashtag
and
Rob done predictions.
see how often I'm right. But I think, I mean, for me, it's just really obvious that this is going to happen. And I'm not shitting on anybody here. I don't want anybody to feel offended by this, but I think we are looking down the barrel of lots and lots of women who are training in the gym now having long-term muscle imbalances because it is stylish and avant-garde and everybody wants to have this kind of big booty
Mm,
at the moment. I hear it. Ladies, you look great. But what concerns me is the fact that someone will be training glutes and legs 2 or 3 times a week, but not bench pressing
yeah.
or not trying to do pull-ups. And I get it's the aesthetic, but what's going to happen eventually is you're going to build a ton of muscle in and around the glute and legs, and that's going to be pulling against other weaker areas. And I think people like Adam Duncan, our sports physio, is going to make a fortune off of this
Yeah.
booty movement because I just think it's so. You used to see it with guys, right? If you walk around the gyms and you'll see the guys that are just training chest and biceps, and you look at their back, they've kind of got like these rounded
Yeah. Where it's starting to
shoulders
compensate.
because everything's kind of tight in the front but weak in the back. I think we're going to see something like that coming down the line for the ladies.
But you actually see that with sport specific as well. So
Mm.
you take, even if you do a sport and you're training, this is going off subject a little bit, but if you're training and only training through one movement pattern, and let's take pole for example, although pole is, you know, very transverse, the right word, like we're moving through different planes of different, so many different planes of motion, that it feels like you're training loads of different muscles, but actually the push and pull predominantly comes from the same place. But exactly what you said, you hit the nail on the head in terms of your body has sling systems through it. So if you've got an injury in your right shoulder, it's not to say that it's not coming from the right hand side of your shoulder,
Mm.
but your shoulder is connected down to your glute, then your glute's connected to your hamstring, and then to your knee and to your calves, and it could actually be that your calves are really tight and it's pulling down the whole chain.
Mm.
I mean, that's a really
Yeah,
extreme
quite an extreme
example. That
example,
is a
but
very,
it's
very extreme. But
but it paints a picture.
you have sling systems, so everything is attached. So it's really, really important to be a well-rounded individual when it comes to training, regardless of the sport that you do or whether you're just going to the gym for funsies.
Yeah. A couple of things I'd like to add on to that, just about the gym environment. And actually, we're planning on bringing a friend of ours on who's a personal trainer and in a gym floor personal trainer, to talk about this subject. But um, gym anxiety is real. It's real for sure, and it's an intimidating place. A couple of things I'd like you to consider. Firstly, try take a friend. It's a lot better if there's two of you.
Mm.
Um, but I promise, no one's looking at you. And there will be some exceptions. I'm sure there'll be some gym creeps. That's just unfortunately the way of the world. But everybody's got their own hang-ups. So when you go into the gym and you're self-conscious about your legs, so is the bodybuilder next to you. He's worrying about his calves being too small or his triceps not being developed enough. Everybody's got their own shit. So it's a funny place actually, the gym, because everybody's working on themselves.
Mm.
Everybody's trying to work on self-development, and no one is noticing your insecurities because they're too wrapped up on their own.
Yeah, for sure. But with that as well, a lot of places that you go now will give you a tour of the gym. That's not like a in-person tour. You can a lot of time get a virtual tour,
Hmm.
or you can get an understanding of the equipment that's in the gym. So you can roadmap out your session, or even if you do go in and have a little, mooch around with a PT that gives you a bit of a tour, to just understand where all the equipment is, because sometimes that's really daunting
Hmm.
when you're trying to find a piece of equipment, you don't know what it is, or you don't know what the gym has, and you're like, oh my god, everyone's staring at me, I feel like an absolute idiot because I don't know what to do. So I think having a bit of a understanding of the exercises that you're going to do first, which obviously comes with having a plan, but maybe having some backup exercises
Mm.
too. So let's say, for example, you were going to do chest press on the machine, because, even if you weren't that confident to go into the free weight section yet, you can maybe do a bit of machine work, but that machine's taken. So then what do you do?
Mm.
Well, maybe you could do press ups instead over in the like the matted area. Or I think a really, really good option, which a lot of people tend to do, is and this is why I love kettlebell training so much, or even dumbbell training, you can actually get a full session in with a kettlebell if you wanted to, or a dumbbell.
Mm.
So you could take a couple of weights, go into a quiet little section of the gym, whether that's the studio or a lot of places. Like when I went to Pure Gym in Stirling, they actually have like a dedicated sort of studio for you to go in and
That's cool.
sort of train. And they have certain areas for certain things, but like we train at David Lloyd, they have areas, don't they, where you can go and stretch, and
Yeah.
so you have somewhere where you can take yourself away. So I think if you are an absolute beginner, that is a fabulous way of doing it. You could do a full body workout with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, start to get a feel of the gym, start to get a feel for the people that are there as well.
Hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
You start to see familiar faces, people start to smile at you,
Hmm.
and then you start to feel a bit more confident, and, the PTs get to know you, and, that comes with time. But having those backups, if you are going into the gym like as a lone wolf, if the machine that you are wanting to work on is taken, have a little bit of an exit strategy, so you don't feel like, I don't really know what to do now. Oh,
Yeah.
fuck
It's
it.
great.
I'm just gonna cancel. I'm just gonna stop my workout.
I think it's good advice. I do.
So yeah,
Great. Any more for any more?
I think we've covered it. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah. Yeah. We want to try and make these as digestible as possible. We don't want to overwhelm with the information. And we don't want to nerd out too much as well. We want to make these episodes really like accessible,
Mm.
um, that anybody can kind of just jump in and listen to. And there'll be times when we nerd out a little bit. And as I said last episode, we're still going to bring on experts in their field, because I think that's really valuable. But yeah, we just want to give you kind of these bite-sized chunks, these things you can take away. And if there's one or two little pearls of wisdom that you take away from these episodes, and I'd be delighted with that.
Oh yeah, same. I absolutely agree. It's just, yeah, we're just highlighting the importance. We have so many clients. A lot of the clients that do come to us are already training and have that sort of foot in the door, so to speak.
Mm,
They're a bit more comfortable. But we interact with so many people on a day-to-day basis that would like to improve, especially women. All the stuff that we've spoken about, or we've seen with women where, maybe their mobility's hindered, or, range of movement. And you can just see that if that's all preventative. That's,
for
you
sure.
can put stuff in place to do that. So if you are a woman, strength training, there's so much more to it than just your physique. The long-term benefits are just they're just a non-negotiable.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we'll bring it home there. Thank you as always for listening. Thank you for your support. We're excited to keep this to
Train.
to keep this train on the tracks as best we can. So yeah, like I said, we appreciate your support, and we will see you next time.